Hello, and welcome to Chapter 1, Introduction to Ethical Hacking. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to copy a few of these notes and submit them as homework. Okay, so just open up a new Microsoft Word. Whatever I tell you to copy, you put them down on that Microsoft Word, and when we're all done, you submit that as homework. Okay, so before we even get started, I want to put out the disclaimer that they are placed on every single lab in this course. So I want to make sure that you understand what we're doing is, and all the labs that we are doing are ethical. So here's the disclaimer. The purpose of this course, lab experiments, is to show you how to protect yourself from these types of attacks and should only be performed on systems you have exploit permissions to do so. These materials or lab contains tools and techniques that are used by hackers to penetrate and infect computer systems, servers, and personal mobile devices. Now, the professor, RVCC, and any of its affiliates are not responsible for any malicious use of this information. Now, this material, including all the labs that we are doing, is for educational purposes only. If you do anything else that is in any way unethical or illegal, and you gain this content from the course, it's your responsibility. Okay, so having said that, I know this is an ethical course, so I expect you all to be ethical when we are performing our labs, especially if we're doing it outside the classroom. All right, so let's begin. So, what is an ethical hacker? An ethical hacker must know his or her environment and know all the vulnerabilities and address them as needed. Cybercrimes, for example, will include stealing passwords, network intrusions, social engineering, transmitting illegal material, fraud, etc. All of these. All right, so here's the first thing I want you to write. The three things that an attacker needs. An attacker needs the means to do the attack, the motive, if they have the motive, the means meaning do they have the tools, and the opportunity. So those are the three things that an attacker would need to really launch a successful attack. Now, as an ethical hacker, we only can control and eliminate the opportunity. So as much as we can, we want to make it very hard for the attacker to perform his or her penetration or attack. An ethical hacker should never target a system or a network that you do not own or have permission to test. So that's very, very important. So don't just try it, as a prank or anything like that. Okay? So please be very, very careful. If you are going to do any pen testing on any device, make sure that the owner knows. And if you own it, of course, that's acceptable. Without a contract, you have no real proof that you have permission from the system owner to perform any of these tests. So that's important. All right. So as a certified ethical hacker, please review the following 3 points. So I want, the following categories of hackers, I think we covered them in many different parts of our program. So you can read these off. But as an ethical hacker, a certified ethical hacker, there are 19 points that you should be familiar with. And I highly recommend that you go over these. Now, remember, when we do the midterm, I'm going to take questions straight out of these notes. And of course, these notes are a summary of the chapter. And what I'm doing right now is a summary of the summary. So I highly recommend that you read the chapter, go over the notes at least once or twice. Okay? I'll be doing a disservice to you not to tell you to read the chapters, of course. So reading is extremely important. In fact, if you don't want to read, when you open it up in the PDF, if you go on the top right-hand corner of your PDF, when the book opens, you can actually have the PDF read it out for you while you're just watching. So you could do that if you want to. But go over those 19 points. I don't want to go over them because I want to make sure that our lecture is less than 15 minutes. I want to make it nice, short, so we can go through this pretty quickly. I don't want to get you bored. So when we are in class, we'll spend more time doing some hands-on experiments. So I think it's much better that way, where you can go over the notes at home and it's the lecture, I guess. And when we come to class, when we are doing face-to-face, you'll be doing experiments, hands-on experiments with me. So this way, you'll learn by doing things than just sitting there and listening. Anyway, some terms that you should be familiar with: HAG value, target of evaluation, attack, exploit. This is clearly defined as a breach of the security system. 0 day. 0 day is when somebody creates an attack or a virus or whatever, and no one has a defense for it yet. So what can you do? Well, the only way to combat against a 0 day attack is to have a policy in place that will prevent anything or any connections that originated from outside your land. That's one way of doing it. Security, a threat. You need to know what a threat is. It's considered to be a potential violation of security. Vulnerability, of course, and daisy chaining. Okay, so what are the goal of a pen tester? Those are the 3 things I want you to write. I'm not asking you, by the way, to write a lot of stuff. So what are the goals? There are 3 goals. They're called the CIA: the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I want you to write these down so you'll know the difference. That's extremely important. Almost in every security course that you'll be taking, we'll be discussing the CIA: the confidentiality, integrity, and the availability of the data. Confidentiality means that you want to make sure that only the sender and the receiver have access, authorized users have access to the data. So how do you protect the confidentiality of the data? Of course, you use encryption. And the stronger the encryption, the better, of course. Integrity. Integrity means that you want to make sure that the data that's being transmitted or standing still has not been compromised. Nobody has tampered with it. All right. Passwords are usually hashed. We use a hash algorithm to make sure that the passwords are not altered, or to check for the password to see if it's correct or not. Validating the password itself. Availability, which is extremely important. Availability is to make sure that users have access to their resources, no matter what that resource is. It could be a printer, it could be connecting to the internet, it could be connecting to your wireless router. So, it doesn't have to be a distributed or a denial service attack to make sure that you don't have access to your wireless router or to your web page. It could be that there is a blackout, that you don't have access to your servers or whatever, anything. Something happened to the building that you don't have access to it. So you don't have the availability of accessing your resources. So you're going to think about how to protect and put up all of these defenses, from intrusion prevention systems, firewalls, and also locking your physical devices. Make sure no one has access to the physical devices. Having redundancies and system fault tolerances in place to make sure that if anything fails, another device will pick up immediately, or another link, for example. But we'll be discussing these in different courses and implementing those, the redundancies and the system fault tolerances and so on. But So the goals of a pen tester is to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and the availability of data. Okay, so hacking methodologies. What can you do? What do you do and how do you hack? So getting into that. Okay, before we get to that, I'm sorry. The breaching of the CIA. So how do you breach the confidentiality, integrity, and the authentication? Disclosure of the data, altering the data, or disruption or loss. Okay, so encryption and hashing provides authenticity and non-repudiation. Non-repudiation means no one will be able to say, "Hey, I didn't do this." By doing hashing and confidentiality, you'll make sure that no one is able to say that. That's what non-repudiation means. All right, so hacking methodologies. How do you hack? Before you hack, you have to go through certain phases. There's footprinting, which is passive. I want you to write these down. So, phase number 1, when you are doing your hacking, is you do footprinting, which means you're doing passive method of gaining information. Then the next one, you do scanning, the next phase. Scanning is you glean over these information from the footprinting phase to get as much as you can. You get a little bit more active, and you might get caught by doing certain things, using certain utilities. And then the third phase is you go through enumeration, which means you extract more details from the scanning phase. And you really get a lot of information. So you got to go through 3 phases before you actually do the system hacking, before you break into the network. And once you do that, that's the 4th step, system hacking. And then after that, once you get in, you want to escalate your privileges. You want to give yourself as much privileges as you can, so you cannot, either you hide yourself or you give yourself rights that you cannot be deleted, or set up some sort of a backdoor. All right, so the hacking methodologies, which is our chapters in the book that we are going to follow every week, one of these will be a chapter, and we'll get into details. So the hacking methodologies include footprinting, scanning, enumeration, system hacking, and then escalating your privileges. All right, so this is what I went over just now. So what else do you need to know? Incident response also is important. I'm sorry, excuse me. The incident response. You need to know the response, which is you establish just what actually occurred, the triad, to determine how seriously the incident has impacted the critical system, and of course, investigation. Containment includes analysis and tracking, recovery, and repair. And the last thing that I really want to go over is the chain of custody. This is important. So when an incident happens, you want to keep track of it. So please write these 5 steps containing the chain of custody. So when something happened, you can preserve the evidence. And in case you ever need to go to court, this is very, very important, and it has to be documented. So the chain of custody includes what evidence has been collected, how the evidence was obtained, who handled the evidence, what reason did each person have for handling the evidence, and what has the evidence traveled, and where was this evidence ultimately stored. All right, so please take these notes that I asked you about. This is really it. So we'll go on to the next chapter. So write what I've told you on a separate Microsoft Word, save it, and upload it as homework. All right, until the next chapter, I'll see you then.